In 2024, something started killing the pythons in Florida's Everglades. Not hunters, not alligators, something else. Wildlife officers found dead pythons with strange bite patterns. Trail cameras captured footage of an animal that shouldn't exist in North America. And in areas where pythons once ruled, they've mysteriously vanished by the thousands. The rumors spreading through wildlife circles sound absolutely insane. Florida may have secretly released one of nature's most vicious predators to fight their python problem. A creature so fearless it attacks lions. So aggressive it eats cobras for breakfast. So dangerous that scientists are terrified of what happens next. And if the evidence is real, we're watching one of the most controversial ecological experiments in history, whether we agreed to it or not. To understand how we got here, we need to go back to the 1970 seconds. It's the era of disco, bell-bottoms, and unfortunately, exotic pet trends that would change Florida forever. Picture this: Miami, 1979. The exotic pet trade is booming. Wealthy collectors and enthusiasts are importing Burmese pythons from Southeast Asia. These snakes are beautiful, docile as babies, and honestly, pretty cool conversation starters. But here's what nobody told these pet owners. Burmese pythons don't stay small. We're talking about snakes that can grow to 20 feet long and weigh over 200 pounds. They can live for 25 years, and they have an appetite that would make a teenager look picky. So what happened when little Monty the python turned into a massive, hungry serpent that required a rabbit or chicken every week? People did what irresponsible pet owners have done throughout history. They released them. Some pythons escaped during Hurricane Andrew in 1992, when a breeding facility was destroyed. Others were deliberately set free by overwhelmed owners. And the Everglades, with its warm climate, abundant water, and endless food supply, was the perfect paradise for these serpents. But here's where it gets truly terrifying. Female Burmese pythons can lay up to 100 eggs at a time. One python becomes 2. 2 become 200. 200 become 20,000. By the early 2000s, scientists started noticing something disturbing. The native wildlife was disappearing. Let me hit you with some numbers that should absolutely terrify you. A 2012 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences revealed something shocking. In areas where pythons had been established for years, they found raccoon populations had declined by 99.3%. Opossums? Down 98.9%. Bobcats? A 87.5% decrease. Marsh rabbits and cottontail rabbits? They couldn't find a single one in their surveys. Let that sink in. These animals had thrived in the Everglades for thousands of years, and in just 2 decades, they were virtually wiped out. But it's not just about the animals the pythons eat. It's about the entire ecosystem collapsing like dominoes. Panthers, one of Florida's most iconic predators, are starving because the pythons have eaten their prey. Birds that nest on the ground are vanishing. Even alligators, the ancient apex predators of the swamp, have been found dead inside pythons' stomachs. And we're not talking about a few pythons. Conservative estimates put the population at over 300,000 snakes in South Florida. Some experts think it could be over 1 million. The Everglades, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most unique ecosystems on Earth, is being strangled by an invasive species that should never have been there in the first place. So what did Florida do about it? Florida didn't take this lying down. They threw everything they could at the problem. First came the Python Challenge. Starting in 2013, Florida opened up python hunting to the public. They offered cash prizes, organized competitions, and recruited hunters from all over the country. The reward? up to $1,000 per python, with bonuses for the longest snakes. Sounds promising, right? Well, in the first Python challenge, over 1,600 people participated over 1 month. The total number of pythons caught? Just 68. 68 pythons when there are potentially 1 million out there. Then they tried technology. They started using radio transmitters, attaching them to male pythons during breeding season so they'd lead hunters to females. They deployed detector dogs trained specifically to sniff out pythons. They even started using drones with thermal imaging cameras. The most successful program? Florida's official python elimination program pays contracted hunters year-round. Since 2017, these elite hunters have removed over 17,000 pythons. 17,000 sounds impressive. Until you realize that represents maybe 2 to 5% of the total population. For every python they remove, dozens more are born. The math was brutal. Scientists calculated that even if they could remove 90% of pythons every year, which was impossible, the population would still rebound within a few years. They needed something more, something radical. They needed a natural predator. Now, this is where our story takes a turn that seems almost too crazy to be true. In late 2023, rumors started circulating in wildlife management circles. Anonymous sources claimed that Florida officials were in discussions with experts from Africa and India about importing one of nature's most fearless predators, the honey badger. If you don't know about honey badgers, let me educate you real quick. Honey badgers, despite their cute name, are absolute units. They're in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's most fearless animal. They've been filmed fighting lions. They eat cobras for breakfast, literally. They have incredibly thick skin that's resistant to snake bites, bee stings, and even porcupine quills. And here's the kicker. In their native habitats, honey badgers actively hunt and eat pythons and other large snakes. You see where this is going? Some wildlife officials reportedly argued this was the perfect solution. Honey badgers are natural python predators, immune to most snake venom, aggressive enough to attack adult pythons, small enough to navigate the same terrain pythons use, unlikely to overpopulate since they're solitary and territorial. On paper, it looked like a match made in heaven, or maybe hell, depending on your perspective. But there was one massive problem. The scientific community went absolutely ballistic when these rumors leaked. Dr. Sarah Morrison, an invasive species expert from the University of Florida, was quoted saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, that this would be like fighting fire with napalm. The concern was simple but terrifying. What happens after the honey badgers finish with the pythons? Honey badgers aren't picky eaters. They're opportunistic omnivores that eat literally anything they can kill. Ground nesting birds? Gone. Turtle eggs? Decimated. Small mammals, the few that remain? Wiped out. And there was historical precedent that should have been a massive red flag. In the late 1800s, sugarcane farmers in Australia had a problem with beetles, so they imported cane toads from South America. The toads were supposed to eat the beetles and solve the problem. Today, Australia has over 200 million cane toads. They're poisoning native predators, and they've spread across the entire continent. The beetles? Still there. Or take the mongoose in Hawaii. Imported to control rats in sugarcane fields, they instead developed a taste for native bird eggs and pushed several species to extinction. History has shown us again and again. Introducing a non-native predator to control another invasive species is playing Russian roulette with an entire ecosystem. The scientific consensus was clear. Don't do it. The risks far outweigh any potential benefits. Florida officials publicly stated they would not pursue this avenue. But then, things got weird. In March 2024, something unusual started happening in the Everglades. A Florida Fish and Wildlife officer, who requested to remain anonymous, reported seeing an animal he couldn't identify. Stocky, low to the ground, moving with unusual aggression near a canal known for python activity. He didn't get a clear photo, but his description matched a honey badger almost perfectly. 2 weeks later, a wildlife photographer captured something on a trail camera in Big Cypress National Preserve. The footage was grainy, taken at night, but it showed an animal with the distinctive posture and movement pattern of a honey badger in a location where no such animal should exist. The footage went viral on wildlife forums before mysteriously disappearing. Copies still circulate, but their authenticity has been heavily debated. Then came the Reddit posts and Facebook groups. Everglades, guides, hunters, and hikers started reporting unusual digging patterns near python nests, aggressive animals attacking, snakes with a ferocity they'd never witnessed, strange vocalizations that didn't match any known Florida wildlife, dead pythons with bite patterns that didn't match alligator or other native predator attacks. Now, skeptics will say these are misidentifications. Maybe they saw large otters or wolverines that somehow made it to Florida. Or they're just making it up for internet fame. But here's what we know for certain. Python sightings in certain areas have declined by over 40% in the last year. That's not normal. Even with increased hunting efforts, that kind of drop is statistically unusual. And then there's the government's response. Or rather, their lack of one. When pressed about the honey badger rumors, Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission has given vague, non-committal responses. They deny any official program, but they haven't explicitly denied that honey badgers are in the Everglades. That distinction is important. Okay, let's put on our tinfoil hats for a moment and explore what might be happening. Theory 1. The unofficial release. Some people believe Florida officials, frustrated by failed efforts and mounting political pressure, authorized a covert release of honey badgers. No official program, no public announcement, just a quiet introduction to see what would happen. If it works, they can take credit later. If it fails, they deny everything. Theory 2. Private intervention. Wealthy landowners and ranchers in South Florida have lost livestock to pythons. Some theorize that private individuals imported honey badgers illegally and released them on their properties. The animals then spread into the Everglades naturally. Theory 3. Accidental introduction. Perhaps honey badgers were imported for zoos or private collections and escaped, just like the pythons did decades ago. History repeating itself in the most ironic way possible. Theory 4. Mass hysteria. Maybe there are no honey badgers at all. Python populations naturally fluctuate. The sightings are misidentified animals, and we're seeing what we want to see because the story is so compelling. But here's what makes me lean toward believing something is actually happening. The pattern of python decline corresponds geographically with the reported honey badger sightings. That's not random. Areas in the northern Everglades show the biggest drops, exactly where the alleged sightings are concentrated. And there's one more piece of evidence that's hard to ignore. In May 2024, a biology graduate student conducting research in the Everglades found something unusual. Scat samples that didn't match any known Florida species. She sent them to a lab for DNA analysis. The results? Inconclusive for definitive species identification, but the genetic markers were consistent with the Mustelidae family, the family that includes honey badgers, as well as otters and wolverines. Now, Florida has river otters, but these samples were found in upland areas where otters don't typically venture. The diet markers showed remains of reptilian scales and eggs, consistent with a python predator. The researcher tried to publish her findings, but faced rejection from journals who called the conclusions too speculative. She posted her data online, where it's been analyzed and debated ever since. Then there's the veterinary evidence. 2 animals were brought to wildlife rehabilitation centers in South Florida in the past year. Both died before proper identification. Both had characteristics that veterinarians described as unusual and potentially non-native. Photos of one specimen leaked online. Wildlife experts from around the world weighed in. The consensus? It looked remarkably like a honey badger, possibly mixed with another species, possibly just a very strange-looking animal. Florida Fish and Wildlife confiscated both bodies and refused to comment. Make of that what you will. Let's assume for a moment that honey badgers are actually in the prive. Everglades. What does this mean for the ecosystem? Best case scenario, the honey badgers focus primarily on pythons, reduce their population to manageable levels, and then their own population stabilizes because they're territorial and don't reproduce quickly. The ecosystem finds a new balance. Native species begin to recover, and we accidentally stumble into a success story. Worst case scenario, we now have 2 invasive superpredators instead of 1. Honey badgers decimate what's left of ground-nesting birds, turtle populations, and small mammals. They breed more successfully than expected in Florida's climate. In 20 years, we're making videos about the honey badger crisis and trying to figure out what predator we can introduce to control them. The truth is, ecosystems are incredibly complex. They're built over millions of years through countless interactions between species. When we interfere even with good intentions, we're rolling dice with nature. The pythons themselves are a perfect example. Nobody in the 1,970 seconds imagined that a few released pets would cause an ecological collapse. They thought the snakes would die in the cold winters, or predators would keep them in check, or they'd simply disappear into the vastness of the Everglades. They were catastrophically wrong. Are we about to make the same mistake again? Or is this different? Is this the rare case where fighting fire with fire actually works? As of right now, in October 2025, the situation remains unclear. Python populations in certain areas continue to decline at unusual rates. Sightings of unidentified animals continue to be reported. Florida officials continue to give non-answers. The scientific community remains divided. Some researchers privately admit that if honey badgers are there, and if they're controlling pythons, we might want to see how this experiment plays out before intervening. Others are calling for immediate investigation and removal of any potential honey badgers. Environmental groups are filing Freedom of Information Act requests, demanding disclosure of any wildlife introduction programs. So far, they've received heavily redacted documents that neither confirm nor deny anything useful. Meanwhile, the Everglades hang in the balance. Python hunters report that their job is getting harder not because there are too many snakes, but because they're finding fewer of them in areas that used to be hotspots. That's either really good news or really concerning news, depending on what's causing it. Tour guides in the Everglades are starting to warn visitors to be cautious, to stay on marked trails, and to report any unusual animal sightings. They don't say what they're worried about, but the implication is clear. Something is out there. So, here we are. An ecological crisis decades in the making, caused by human irresponsibility and short-sighted decision-making. A desperate search for solutions that led officials to consider the unthinkable. And, now, mounting evidence that they might have actually done it. Did Florida release honey badgers into the Everglades? Officially, no. Unofficially, the evidence certainly suggests something unusual is happening. And maybe that's the most important lesson here. We created this problem through ignorance and irresponsibility. Now we're potentially solving it with secrecy and desperation. The Everglades ecosystem took thousands of years to develop. We broke it in 30 years. Can we fix it in our lifetime? And at what cost? I don't have the answers. Nobody does. But I know this. Nature is resilient, but she's not infinitely forgiving. Every action we take has consequences we can't fully predict. The pythons taught us that lesson. The honey badgers, if they're really there, might be about to teach us again. What do you think? Are honey badgers actually in the Everglades? Is this a brilliant solution? Or another ecological disaster waiting to happen? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you live in South Florida and you've seen something unusual in the wilderness, maybe keep your eyes open. You might be witnessing history in the making, or history repeating itself. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because if this story develops, you'll want to know about it. I'll see you in the next one.